Last year, I made some predictions on what I thought was going to happen in the economy, the job market, the markets in general for 2025. And just a week or two ago, I was doing my video for 2026 on predicting what I think might be happening in 2026. And I thought out loud while I was recording the video, maybe I should go back and take a look at 2025 and see what I got right and what I got wrong. And so that's what we're doing today. So we're taking back a look at what I was saying for 2025 and see what I got right and wrong. And I think this is an important thing to do, not just because you learn from it, it helps you in the long run, all that stuff that people say about failure makes you stronger, all that stuff. I wouldn't say if I got something wrong, it's failure, but it is good to go review that kind of stuff, right? But I also think at this time of year, at the end of 2025, I'm getting a lot of questions from people about what do I think is going to happen in 2026? Where do I think the markets are going to go? Do I think anything big is going to happen? Should they be changing allocation? Which is really good questions. Those are great questions. You should be asking those questions. However, I also want to remind everybody, predictions are an educated guess. That's all they are. And so everybody makes mistakes. I saw this on, I think it was on X, and somebody said that some economist or something had said that the markets look like they might be flat for the next 10 years. And Morgan Housel, who, if you haven't read some of his books, you should. He's a great writer when it comes to the finance world and especially financial mindset. He does a great job. He commented, well, you guys have been predicting this 10 years before that, and 10 years before that, and 10 years before that. So how are we supposed to know if that's right or not? And he's right. Predictions are educated guesses. And sometimes educated guesses and predictions can be skewed by points of view, political affiliations, all that stuff as well. I really try not to do that here, but I'm sure, certain things, sway my opinion back and forth. So if it sounds good to you to see how we actually did with our predictions in 2025 on the economy, stick around because that's what we're going to be doing. Now, if you are new here, welcome. We're so happy to have you. I'm Lisa. I'm a financial advisor. I have been for over 14 years, almost 15 years, and I help people get to financial freedom as quickly as possible. If you're returning, we're happy to have you back, and let's get into it. Okay, so when it comes to the jobs and economy, what did I get right and what did I get wrong? Things that I got right were that AI and automation were going to continue to reshape the job market, job roles, and the markets in general, meaning the stock markets. I was right about that. Specialized skills still stayed in high demand, and that hybrid work stayed strong in many industries. As much as the companies were pushing, they were not going to necessarily get people back in the office. I mean, I work from home. I get it. I like working from home. Okay, so what did I get wrong when it comes to this stuff? Some industries recovered a lot slower or faster than I predicted on that. Also, certain sectors resisted in different areas that I wasn't anticipating. And wage growth trends, I thought were going to go up a bit. They have gone up for sure. But I feel like since we're still battling a little bit of inflation and still dealing with that aftermath of 2022, we've talked about in prior videos about how there's lag, right? And I think the 2022 inflation lag was something I was not necessarily keeping in mind. And that lag is still here. And I think it will continue in 2026. And so wage growth trends, while they have gone up, they have not gone up enough to compete with the cost of everyday living. We were talking a lot about grocery prices and that kind of stuff. in 2024. And while those are still important and those are still, higher than a lot of us want to pay, I think the focus this year is going to be a lot on insurance. Health insurance is already a big topic, auto insurance, home insurance, utilities. Utilities aren't as bad from what I've heard, but the insurances are really they're skyrocketing, and that has to be dealt with this year, I think, from either party. Honestly, nobody's dealing with that. They want to yell about beef prices, but they're not talking about the fact that home insurance prices are just skyrocketing, and nobody's talking about that. So I think that I guess that's a prediction, right? But I think I was wrong where I thought that the wages were going to go up enough to help balance things out more than they did. Just because certain areas I was focusing on, I agree they've balanced out a bit, but other areas they have not balanced out at all. So that's where I was wrong on that. When it came to inflation and prices didn't drop. I was right about that. Prices didn't drop, and they stabilized for sure, but they definitely didn't drop. And interest rate changes continued to influencing borrowing. I also believe I said last time that I didn't believe the interest rates were going to come down dramatically this year. I actually feel like I was a little wrong on that. Not that they've come down dramatically, but actually towards the end of this year, they have picked up steam quite a bit. So I didn't think they were going to do them at all, honestly, this year, hardly at all, at least, just because I knew the tension between President Trump and Jerome Powell were strong from the previous term. What I was wrong on was the timing or the speed of inflation cooling. I believe that it would cool much quicker than it did. That didn't mean that I thought the Fed was going to cut rates, but I did think it was going to cool quite a bit. I wasn't anticipating the tariffs coming on so strong so quickly. I thought we would ease into it, kind of like we did the first term. I was incorrect on that. I do think that had some of the stickiness when it came to inflation. And overall, I feel like some categories just behave differently. I thought housing was going to get a little bit better this year. Really hasn't much. That's why that talk of like the 50-year mortgage and stuff has kind of sprung up because of that. And food costs are still a prominent topic, although I do believe it needs to shift over to insurances, like I just said. So what I got wrong or right on the housing market was housing remained tight and still limited inventory. I didn't think that was going to change overnight. I don't know what they've been doing to make that different. So I don't know if I anticipate in 2026 it's going to be much different than it is right now. And that rates are still going to continue to influence affordability and buyers' behavior. So, I think I don't know if I predicted this necessarily, but I knew that 2025, I didn't believe bond prices were going to change dramatically in the markets. And I do think that with interest rates as high as they are, affordability and lending was going to be a lot more stagnant than I think we anticipated it being. I actually think 2026, I think lending will loosen up a bit, but I don't know for sure on that. Things I got wrong on the housing market was I believed that there was going to be a little bit more price relief than there is. And I didn't realize how the differences of where you live and the housing prices was going to be still as dramatic as it is. I thought that there'd be a little bit of a cooling, but I didn't think it would cool. I thought it would just kind of stagnate out this year, which I guess I was right on because the prices have kind of stagnated out this year, but it doesn't feel like that, at least for people. So there you go. All right. What I got right and wrong when it came to technology and business. AI disruption, I think, you didn't have to be a genius to figure that out. I think so. I'm not going to pat myself on the back too much on that one because I think that was pretty obvious that was going to be part of it. Large firms, large tech firms continue dominance in the markets, in conversations. I was just reviewing something with somebody, and we were talking about how the same, big companies were the same big companies that people invest in last year. So that really did stick around, and that small business was going to continue to innovate and keep up, which I think it still has. I think it will increase more when lending gets a little easier for them. Things I got wrong, though, were tech categories grew faster than I expected. So I expected it to be an overall growth, whereas I think certain categories in tech moved quicker than I expected them to. And that some industries were not disrupted as much as I thought they would be this year. I really thought that, Uber Eats and Amazon delivery and that kind of stuff were going to be disrupted much more than they have been this year. I anticipated those self-driving cars and the drones to be much more prominent by the end of the year than it is. So we'll see in 2026 if that's correct or not. Global trends that I got right and wrong. I think global tensions are still always going to be influencing the market. I think that will be true in 2026 as well. And emerging economies continue to play bigger roles in things. India was a big talking point this year, whereas I don't think we've talked about India much. And so same with Thailand, same with, we're hearing a lot more about Cambodia. We're hearing a lot more about these emerging markets than we have in the past. And I think that was a prediction I made last year. Things that are interesting to me is the shifts. I am kind of surprised, and this wasn't anticipated in the video because I didn't think tariffs were going to be a huge discussion in 2025. I was obviously wrong about that. I think a lot of people were wrong about that. I don't think any of us thought that tariffs were going to be the forefront, like one of the first things that the Trump administration was going to tackle. I do think that what I was surprised about when that happened was how quickly other countries were willing to work and make it work. And not that I didn't anticipate that the US had influence and definitely had some upper hand when it came to our markets buying internationally. I guess I didn't realize how much international buying we did, which was silly on my part because you just look in my pantry, you look around the house, and everything's made in other countries as well. So we obviously do rely on other countries quite a bit for our buying purposes. And like I said, trade, flows changed much quicker than forecasted. I did not expect trade to move as quickly as it did. And there's still definitely some outliers. We've still got the negotiations with China and other things, but I don't know. I just didn't expect it to move as quickly as it did. I would say some areas in personal finance that I think I didn't anticipate, or I did anticipate, excuse me, were household emergency funds were still going to fluctuate towards the down, which unfortunately I was right. People are holding on to less cash in general, which I think is a problem. I think it's an issue that people are having, and saving and investing consistently and staying diversified were going to just be part of the strategy for a lot of people, which that's not really a prediction. Saving, investing consistently, and staying diversified is really the core of doing good financial planning work, which is interesting. So final takeaways are that these forecasts are definitely not guidelines. It's funny because now I think about some of the things I said in 2025. I I don't know. I don't know. It's funny, you think about what you said and you realize what a different perspective you have just a year later. And so, it's about really taking educated guesses and really observing. I think that's the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway I'd like you to take from this is that understanding that you observe, well, there goes the trash truck. Um, you observe what is happening and you react to it, and you learn and you grow and you think differently a little bit and that kind of stuff. And staying involved. I don't like necessarily staying involved with politics as much as I do, but you have to stay that involved when you're trying to figure out what technical moves you should make for yourself. And you have to keep that in mind when you're watching politics and when you're watching what's happening in the world, that there is very little that you can control of it. But what you can control is being aware of the patterns. Tony Robbins talks a lot about being understanding the patterns of your life, of the universe. And the more you pay attention to all of this stuff in real time, the more you'll start to see patterns on things. And it helps you stay calm during craziness, like in April of 2025 when the tariff news broke out and the markets started to go down and everybody wanted to freak out. I I was surprised that we were talking about tariffs this early, but I had looked at patterns and I understand how the markets work and I understand, was I 100% going to be right? I didn't know. I'm not I don't have a crystal ball. I always make that joke. My crystal ball is kind of foggy sometimes. It doesn't work all the time, it doesn't. But I think if you can understand the patterns of things, understand the basics of how the economy works, understand the basics of how the market fluctuates and changes and moves, that will help you during these crazy dramatic times like April 2025, like 2022 when the market went down. It helps you get through those times when you understand how patterns work. So these prediction videos and really thinking about what could be happening in 2026 and what did I get wrong is a great way of kind of staying informed, staying present during these times. So I hope that helped. I hope you enjoyed kind of hearing where I sat back and went, wow, I was really wrong about that. Or, I was right on that. And like I said, some of the predictions were easy to do, like the AI stuff. Everybody knew AI was going to be forefront this year, right? Be forefront in 2026 too, I will tell you that. Until next time, be safe out there, have fun, be kind to one another, and I will see you on the next video. Bye-bye.